Hello, welcome everybody. Going to give people a few chance a minute here to log on, and then we'll get started. I put a note in the chat. You can ask your questions directly in the chat if you have any, or you can put them in the question and answer section. We will have time at the end for questions, so please feel free to ask anything that you may have come up. I'm happy to answer. Give it about another 30 seconds and then I'll start. All right, well, welcome. I'm glad to have everybody here today. This is being recorded, so it will be available on replay. I've had some requests for that. People couldn't make it due to meetings and other things that go on in the business and every day. So we're going to talk today about grow your service department to drive your company. My name is John Cotney. Just quick introduction. If you don't know me, I hope I see a lot of you on LinkedIn, I know. But currently I'm CEO of Cotney Consulting Group. Prior to founding Cotney Consulting Group 3 years ago, I spent 45 years in the roofing industry on the same side as most of the people here as a contractor. Worked through that my entire career. So I'm going to give you this from an aspect of what I've learned and what works and what I'm working with clients now of what really helps you grow the service divisions within their companies. So my experience started back in the 80s is when I first realized how important it was to provide this type of service along with other parts of your business. So I'm a huge proponent of driving your business with a great service department. So I want to talk a little bit about, typical roofing company structure, right? Residential, commercial. Some do one, some do both, some do a mixture of it, whatever it may be. And really, the main three types of business are new construction, re-roof, and service. So depending on where you're at with your company or the type of work you do, you're going to fall into one of these categories for the most part. So what I like to do this comparison is start out as your typical production crew, right? That works on your operational side. Usually about a 6-person crew is pretty much an average. The yearly revenue yield that you're going to get out of that 6-person crew through industry numbers and data is about 1.1 to 1.4 million, depending on the type of work you do, the amount of material, the cost up runs, labor intensive, so on and so forth. But that's a pretty good rule of thumb to give you an idea. The average net profit throughout the industry overall, depending on company size, out of a production only crew is somewhere between 3 to 10% net profit. I like to focus more on net than I do gross for a few reasons. Net profit is really all that keeps the lifeblood of your company going. That's the money left over after all expenses. So it's always good to judge by what your net is. Gross profits can vary depending on the overhead of a company, how they do the job and cost of goods sold, but that net is what's left over with everything. So service crew, what I love about the magic of that's a 2-person crew for the most part that's going out there. Yearly revenue yield with 2-person crew per truck. I find, I've heard a lot of different people preach different numbers, but I will tell you through my experience, somewhere between 350,000 and 550,000, depending on the part of the country you're in, is a pretty good rule of thumb where your truck revenue is for a 2-person crew is going to range in a year. So compare that average net profit, service department net profit when your mix is all done should be somewhere between 20 and 30% net, not gross. You've heard a lot of people out there talk about you should be doing 55, 60, 65% gross. Again, I'd rather concentrate on that net for obvious reasons. That is the actual money that matters. So what does that mean, right? You can have 3 service crews versus 1 production crew because you got the same 6 people, not necessarily the same exact people, but same overall term of employees, right? So 6 service technicians will yield an additional 300,000 in net profit over 1 production crew. Again, we're not focusing as much on the revenue or the actual gross profit, but based on the numbers that I just showed you in the prior slide, this is what you're looking at doing. So you can start to see now how this really starts to add up in the overall scheme of your company. And if you're running the division yourself or working in the service division, how important it is what you're contributing into the company. So same, it's easy. Same labor force will return 3 times net profit that can be expected from performing new or re-roofing work. Memorize that. Every time you need budget for your service department, go to your team and let them know that you're going to, for what you're getting, you're going to produce 3 times the net profit that they're going to expect out of the operational side. So opportunities from having a great mix of service businesses. So you're going to build solid relationships that you're going to take with you. You're going to grow your overall business. You're going to build a sustainable re-roofing pipeline, which is extremely important, and create a high-end profit center, which is what you want your service to be, a high-end profit center. So I like to talk about, building a sustainable re-roofing pipeline. I am not a huge proponent of roofing contractors overall being a large new construction strategies that drive profitable revenue. Key people in the right roles, and using software and other technologies effectively and efficiently. So what mix of business can a service department benefit from? Now, if you've ever been on prior seminars or you ever have done some reading on this, most of the time you're going to hear the focus on maintenance agreements, maintenance agreements, maintenance agreements. I can't disagree. That's great. But just to kind of give you a little tidbit, less than 3% of facility managers actually sign in overall. This is a stat from their organization into having a, preventative maintenance agreement above having a contractor on board. So you want to sell it, but there's a lot of ways you can make profit from mixing your business, right? You have to be able to handle emergency leak responses. That's basically your T&M, emergency responses at any time somebody has an issue of your clients. Reactive maintenance. A lot of times you'll hear this also known as in the industry as hot sheets, hot tickets. This is when you go out and you get called on a roof leak and there's additional work that needs to be done to solve the problem. You want to get them priced out and get the owner to sign them right away. So at the same token, you bring a business back in. Then there's proactive maintenance, which is your maintenance agreements, which is also a part of your mix, right? And then you have opportunity to work with national roof management companies, which is also known as third-party facilitators. They're a big, they're a big part of our industry now for reasons we'll touch on a little bit later. And what else can you do, right? There's nothing wrong with doing tenant fit out work and small GC projects, doing small work for GCs, units, curbs in, HVAC, contractors. That should be a good part of your mix too. And what do you have the advantage? Expansion, right? You can expand out doing conventional coatings and liquid applied systems. These really fall so much better in a service department than they do an operational division of any roofing companies. And I get asked this question all the time. Can I do residential roof maintenance? Absolutely you can. If your company is not geared towards it, then you may want to stay away from it, or you could put your plan together of how you can incorporate that into your service division only. Couple recommendations on that, because we're not going to touch on this much later, but if you're going to do residential, you definitely want to concentrate on high-end residential. Those are the people that will buy the maintenance agreements and have you come out and do the yearly inspections and perform cleanings and maintenance. So if you're living in an area where there's $1 million plus homes, a lot of high-end, zip codes, it's probably worth looking into. And also multifamily falls really under residential class in my mind. They have, more of a residential type slope roofing, great avenue again. So all of these will bring in different gross profits, different revenue streams, and different net profits. But a combination mix of these is a great way to really drive your service business and growth and bring in an overall mix into your company. So you really don't want to overlook any of these. You want to concentrate on these. So let's talk about strategy, right? So when you're building your strategy for your service department, you want to talk about what is the end goal of your service division. So whether that is taking what mixes of business you want to do, be the fastest response, whatever, you got to come up with your own goals, but you got to have them written down. A goal is only a dream unless you write it down and put a plan together of how to get there. So again, you want to know what customers are you targeting? What fits your business best? Who are you going after? We listed the mix above. What of that is really got you excited and what you can do best in your area that you're in? And you got to have a financial investment. I got a lot of new people coming into the industry, and what do you need? You absolutely need a dedicated team and equipment. You cannot survive in service if you're pulling people off of the operational side and putting them over to fix leaks when you get it, even if you're just starting. If you really want to build a service division, you've got to dedicate the financial investment in your company to make this work correctly. And again, like any other division or any other company, you should have your own milestones and financial goals in your service department, the same as your company's overall, and how these all meet together. So it's not just about fixing leaks, getting T&M bills out, just getting as much revenue, worrying about getting to 4, 5, 600,000 per truck if you can get there. What are your goals? How do you need to hire? What are your milestones? Where do you want to be when? And based on your busy season, your slow season, you need to think about all this. Marketing and sales. I don't put these together. So I'm more into strategies than the actual techniques. I will tell you, most salespeople are more successful with a proper strategy in place of how to sell based off of their whole marketing strategy and everything coming together, business development, than they are learning techniques to go out and try to trick someone into a sale. You don't need to trick anybody into a sale. Sales becomes easy if you actually have a strategy on how to do it. So what you need to do is develop a plan and include some of the following, right? You got to have your target audience. You have to know who you're going after, whether it's a building owner, whether it's third party, whether it's a homeowner, residential, whatever that may be. What is your target audience? Industrial, retail, whatever it may be. Service marketing, sales strategies beyond word of mouth to reach your specific audience. Why I say beyond word of mouth, because there's nothing better than getting that recommendation, being known as your industry expert and getting work that way. But this is to generate it out, right? Social media campaigns. And this can include TV advertising as well. I've seen that be successful in some areas. Whatever that may be, what is your strategy? Who are you going to develop these campaigns to based upon your target audience? Not just because it looks good to have a campaign out there, but what are you going to actually get out of this? Lunch and learns. Great to do, especially if you want to work one-on-one with property managers, facility managers, school systems, and do their, or whatever it may be. Everyone, be that expert. Go in there, teach something, lunch and learn, and they'll always let you give at the end a little plug about your company, give out some brochures. But do the lunch and learns not about just what your company's about, but what they can do to better themselves by using proper, professional roofer doing service and maintenance, etc. Targeted educational webinars. These are great, even if you have a company that may not be in your area in their home office. The decision makers are 5 states away. Set up a targeted educational webinar with them where you come on, or your marketing department, or if you're not comfortable, somebody who is in your company, to teach them something on a webinar. They're going to remember you and know that you are the expert, because you're going to become the educator and the expert. And that's really what people want. Okay, they expect roofing companies to fix leaks. And I'll be honest with you, most people that hire roofers pretty much feel we're all the same, even though that's not true, but that's the view you're going over. You want to be diversified. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, as they say, not just social media, not just, webinars, not just speaking engagements. Do a little bit of mix, have it diversified out there so you're really hitting your target. Target your market. Once you know your target audience, what you're good at, target it consistently and for a length of time, and don't give up on it. Got to have a strong message. What is your message? I'm the best leak finder. No, you want to have something that really gets them in there. Why do they want to use you in order to do? What do you do well? What do you do that someone else may not do? Get a message together and get it out there. You want to incentivize your techs that are out in the field for positive reviews. This is not just for getting a Google review, although that is real important if you're doing a lot of web advertising or websites to people to find your website for your service department. But it's good to get letters of recommendation, that word of mouth. So incentivize, and what I mean incentivize, it doesn't always have to be money. It could be a gift card. It could be having the best one to do it, have a lunch dedication to them at the office, whatever that is. Come up with a plan. Doesn't have to be expensive, but incentivize. Your text grow whatever you're best at, if you're going to go into a new market or expand your travel, do it on something you're very good on. That's not the best time to say, I'm going to go to a new market and I'm going to open up my residential repair and maintenance division. No, if you haven't done it in your own local market, it's probably not going to work out. So again, whatever you're good at, or the same way if you're doing your coatings or your liquid applied membranes, try to do it within your area first and then expand out upon that. Build your team. Again, we talked about this. You have to have a dedicated team. Splitting time between installation teams or your operational staff, management teams, and maintenance, it does not work, and it's a recipe for disaster. No, it doesn't successfully work. You've got to dedicate the people and put them there. So you're going to do basically these things, right? You're going to do repairs and you're going to do maintenance. There is a difference. So developing your team for these specialties is best practice. Repair technicians operate from a reactive fixed mindset, while a maintenance technician operates from a more proactive, keep it working perspective. So when you start to split your team up with your technicians, when you start to interview your technicians, you got somebody that's a get her done person and they're going out and they're going to be able to fix the leak and you don't have the recalls. They're probably not going to be your best maintenance tech to go out and do that proactive maintenance or be able to create work from that, from going out there for what needs to be done with that mindset. So again, look at your people this way, very important. Small projects, coatings and liquid applied crews, right? We talked a little bit about this. This is a really great opportunity to expand out. Could be a 4-person crew. It could be crews that you have set up that work well together, but can also do two, one truck repairs in the meantime till you get a job built up enough, and then you start building these crews, right? So what you need to look for in this is they are going to require a certain amount of production mindset, the same as your production crews to a point, because you're going to have budgets to hit more so than you do with just fixing leaks and maintenance. It's a little bit higher profit. These may be high profit, but they're going to be, you got to still get them done within a certain amount of labor hours and so on. So you have to have the ability to produce, this is what's important, without lacking quality and detail of installation. So that's where these type of crews separate themselves greatly from production. Not that production crews don't care about quality and installation, but I could tell you, I've ran as a COO, I've run tons and tons of production crews and overseen service divisions, and there is a different mindset. So when you can put these people with a production mindset and quality and detailed installation, that's the most successful for coatings and liquid applied systems, because you don't want to have any problems later and they have to be done correctly to spec. Clearly define your service division and teams goals to align with your company's overall mission. So your company has an overall mission, whatever that may be. Every company's different. So what you don't want to do is, if your company's mission, and this sounds crazy, but if your company's mission is to be the largest new construction roofing company in the United States, that may be a problem aligning a service division with that, right? Now, it is successfully done where they have multiple divisions, but the overall mission of the company could be a mix of, we want to provide the best service and quality and safety, whatever it may be out there. So you've got to align your service with the best mission you can, so the goals are the same, right? If the goals are profit goals are set, make sure you know what they are from your upper management on your operations side. And if you're on that side as far as running the company, make sure that you have these goals set and aligned with your overall goals with your service team management. Customer service. So you've heard this spoke about in many different ways, but everyone that is employed in your service division must know customer service is priority one. Honestly, it is, even though you want your whole company to be customer focused, there's no second chances in this. If people don't feel they're being treated correctly, they do not feel they're getting the information, they're calling in, they're not getting what they want, stuff's not being scheduled, whatever it may be, they're not being taken care of with the proper service out of any one of your team members, including your field techs, they will disappear. They're called the silent death on service. They will go away and you may not know it till it's way too late, because you just assume they may not have a problem to call you back. So train your team, right? What do you want to train them on? Client retentions versus the cost of new clients. Teach them about that. It is way cheaper to keep a client than it is to go out and bring in new clients. So you want to teach them why, and every company has different costs associated with this. So if you can figure this out, or rough number, but it's usually industry standard, 3 times as much to bring a new client in as it is to keep one. Client management. This is where your SOPs and procedures come in. You have to have solid operating procedures and solid standards of operation that you want to have in your company. And that also should include how you're going to manage the client, from whether the email comes in, the call comes in, the portal comes in, or with salesperson, whatever brings it in. How is that client getting handled from point A to point Z? And then how does it rotate back into the management cycle to generate more work and keep that client retention? So have those processes in place and make sure you train your team on that. And also, this is, you probably go outside. You may have to hire someone to do this if you don't have a good internal grasp on this. But you want to teach them how to handle irate clients. And you do want to get somebody from the outside to call in and be that irate client and put them through some training calls, because this can be really an emotional issue for someone put into a position that hasn't dealt with this before. And also, too, you want to teach your team when it's time to fire a client. So if the service manager has the authority to fire a client, you want the team to be trained when it's time to put the alerts out to the service manager that, hey, this is probably not the best fit for us, and here's the reasons why I think so. So train them when it's time to fire a client, and then you make the decision that. You don't want somebody taking up 80% of your time and only generating 20% of your revenue. Typical team structure of a service division, right? You have a manager of service, which I like to consider, I didn't say just service manager, manager of service, but that's your leader. So the person that's in this position has to be taught leadership skills, because they're no different than somebody, a vice president or whatever the titles may be. They're leading an entire division. They're leading an entire team. So you want to work on some leadership skills and put the right person in that seat. Then you got administrators. A lot of times they're known in the industry as coordinators, admins, whatever it may be. But this is the person that's going to handle the paperwork process and run the client through. It can also be client touches, however you decide to break them up. I really, one thing to understand when we're going through this, it doesn't really matter what you call someone. It does not matter what they actually do, and you split your jobs up. What matters is this is a basic tree structure of what works. Okay, so you work that into what works best in your company. Then you've got estimator, salesperson, roof survey tech, account manager. So I like to look at these. I've heard many people say estimators can't sell. You got to have somebody that just pumps numbers, and then you got to have a high pressure sales team out there. Not necessarily true. Someone can be trained to properly price a job and to properly sell it at the same time. May not work in all companies, may not work with all people, but it is a possibility, especially when you're starting out. You're probably not going to be able to develop having 5 or 6 different positions in that. So whatever that may be, have your pricing strategy, which is your pricing with your estimator. Have your how are you going to sell strategy, salesperson, whether it is that estimator or it's a separate salesperson. And then we'll talk a little bit about roof survey technician. That is a great position. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later on, but that is really not someone that's going to fix leaks. That is not someone that's going to really necessarily price work. It's not totally an account manager, and it's not really a salesperson. It's kind of that combination of all, and you really can stock your shelves with a lot of work with that. And then you got an account manager. Basically, someone in your company has to be in charge of your clients. So again, fit that in to who makes the best account manager, or if you're large enough, you may have a team of a few people that become specific account managers that oversee all operations within that account with the multiple people in your company. Again, what fits for you. And when you get, as you grow, you got to have a superintendent that, like you would on an operations side. Some people call them project managers. Some people do call them account managers. But again, it's somebody that's responsible for what the techs are doing and the accountability of your field operations. Superintendent, realistically, I've heard people say they can run 8 to 10 crews. Honestly, I think as you grow, you're probably 6 is your magic number, somewhere in there. You could go a little bit more. Some people do a little less, but you don't want this position to be overwhelmed and not have any idea how to manage the field. And then, of course, you got your technicians. And I don't want to just distinguish between a roofer technician and a helper technician, however you decide to split up your crews. And a lot of times they put the head technician is more technologically advanced, and the helper is actually really a roofer, that even though they're not a helper. So that's why I say technicians. So you're going to split your crews based upon your model of going to business and what your strategy is and how it works best for you. Innovative service strategies, okay, or modern service strategies, or basically you could cut innovative out and say proper service strategies. So they consist of we're going to talk about these coming up: roof inspections, roof surveys, technology, drones, the new economy, staff management, and then financial understanding and growth. So roof inspection versus roof survey. So there is a difference, and a lot of roofers promote roof inspections, and I'm going to tell you why you should get away from that. So roof inspection, most, like I said, most promote it, usually does not generate income, usually a free inspection. They're usually used for real estate transactions, bank asset analysis, long-range project planning, courtesy for your partner and customers, and charge minimum fees to companies that require them, that are very general and to be submitted in a simple form. And they're done by many different people, not just roofing. There's inspection services. There's all kinds of people out there doing it. So yes, well, I'm not telling you roof inspections will not be a part of your business, but that should not be your main strategy. So I want you to start thinking about roof inspections as that free service that you may be able to charge a minimum fee. Like if you got a property manager that sends you out, they're going to pay you a couple hundred or whatever it may be to inspect their buildings, and you really know you're not going to get any work out of it. It's just something they do every year. That I would fall into a roof inspection category. Again, I just want you to understand the difference. Now, roof survey. Roof surveys, you want to push, this is where your survey techs will come in. Assessments by a roofing professional. So now you're doing a survey of this roof, which should be separate you from the non-professionals that are just going out and giving a checklist. So you're going to talk about the age of the membrane and flashing conditions in your report. It's an in-depth analysis. I do caution that you be very open on the age of membrane and flashing conditions. And I do caution you to make sure it's not one of your company's roof that was installed and the technician out there says it needs a new re-roof and you still have a 15-year warranty on it. I've seen those things happen. So cautiously always say, roof looks like it's in, fair condition, good condition. You could expect X amount of years out of it. Make the range a little bit wide. It keeps you out of trouble. You want to gather all data with photos, videos, drawing, detailed notes, core samples, etc. Roof matrix report, emergency repair requirements, short-term immediate needs to prevent emergencies, right? And preventative maintenance options. This is where you're getting in to try to get them away from being proactive or reactive to being proactive in your report. And the extensions are roof life expectancy. So selling points, why would I want to buy this from you if you're out there? And extended protection of the building's interior assets and operations. Why if you got an industrial park below your manufacturing plant that cannot be down with leaks or have emergencies, point those things out. And most importantly, you got to show value added to the owner for return on investments. That's one of the biggest mistakes that's made in selling maintenance agreements, is you're not showing them what the value is to do this preventative maintenance. Now, you can go find stats, which we'll go over some of them at the end, that will tell you how much money you'll save in the long run with a roof compared, having a re-roof every so many years, besides extending it out, and how much a square foot they can save, what the dollar is. And you can even show them they're going to save $100,000 in a 25-year span. That's always not enough for people because it depends on where they're at in their career or how long, which you don't always know, they plan on keeping the building. So it's better to show that return on investment for immediate problems. Like if you got leaks over the president's office consistently, maybe a good idea to take a more proactive approach and replace that area or whatever needs to be done with flashing and explain to them, because that person probably doesn't want someone yelling at them every time it rains. So there are ways of doing it. And again, these are just some kickers I'm giving you to look at. So technology. You've got software. You want to have templates set up ahead of time. And when you do send, and the reason why I'm talking about templates and software, on the crowd that's out here, you may be using, and I'm just going to throw some names out there: Java, FCS, Dataformer, Centerpoint, and various other softwares that are out there already, or you're thinking about using it. That's fantastic. But if you're in that position and you're only starting out and you got 1 or 2 trucks, maybe you're not ready for that. So you may still be using Word or PowerPoint or Publish or something to set up your templates in. That's okay. Don't think that's going to hinder you, but I definitely recommend the pre-designed softwares once you start growing, because you'll save in efficiency so much more money and be spending your time with paperwork. But regardless, have your preset templates set up, whether it's your proposals, your roof reports, so that your people putting these together don't have to recreate the wheel every time. Most importantly, work on a legal disclaimer that goes out on your reports so that your work cannot be shared. There's legal consequences for sharing your work. This really is important, especially on roof inspections, because they're getting shared. And a lot of times your surveys are getting shared with competition. So know where you're at, have it there so you can say, hey, you shouldn't have done this. It's right here. A lot of times people see that, it's enough to scare them, but it's always good food for thought. And again, you want to include on your surveys the roof conditions, an overview drawing, outline of where these conditions are located, and written description. So everybody views these differently. So you got the visual, you've got the written word, and you've got the understanding of where everything's at, map. Use technology. You want to get your technicians onto technology, smartphones, tablets, whatever that may be, and any other technology, which we'll talk a little bit in a minute, that can benefit you. But service is a high-tech industry, and to do it properly, you need to be off the pen and paper and taking photos and sending them and clipping them electronically. You got to have a system down. Use technology, it's your friend, because you want to save time, money, and you want to be efficient at this. Drones. I love drones. I'm going to talk to you about this, right? So if you're using drones, fantastic. If you're not, here's some reasons why you should. Accurate inspections. You're going to get an overview of the entire building. It really blows clients' minds, and it makes your people putting pricing together like they've been there. So advanced analysis, you're going to be able to hone down on areas that you really may not be able to, and from looking down view compared to being there and just taking a bunch of pictures and trying to put them together. Right now, you've got high resolution roof imagery, which drones now are all 4K and going in even more, and you put comprehensive reports together. Use them as a great sales tool. You can use them for online presentations of selling to people that are far distance away, that maybe you can't get that one-on-one meeting with. And right now you have 3D modeling coming out, which is absolutely, with these drones, with the software, which is really builds a building right in front of you. I'm very impressed with it. Again, these are great for sales tools and your team to be able to have an understanding of where a problem is when you get it, to send them out. They've even got adapters you can do in your own thermal infrared inspections right there of not only the roof, the facade, and the whole building envelope right off of a drone. And they're more accurate for estimates. Now they have the takeoff software where you can put them in and really get your measurements right off of there. I've seen drones, and I've done some webinars with other people on these, where you can measure your flashing heights, anything you want right off of the drone image. It's a remarkable. But I want you to think a little bit about this. So you do have to be approved to fly a drone. So you got to go through the FAA approval, which really is like taking a mini pilot's test. It's not much different. I've been through it. But I also want you to think about, let's say you're in that service division and you want to sell using drones, but you can't. It doesn't make sense for you to have all of your roof survey techs to have them. And your estimating department on the other side really would like this technology, and you got to go to the owner. So there is an opportunity to bring somebody into your company that you train them to operate a drone. They can go out and do your roof droning for you. They can also drone on the estimating side, and they can also be a benefit to your operations team by droning existing jobs in progress, where your operations team can look at them from a safety and efficiency and a production standpoint. So now you might be able to put a drone team together that benefits your service department, but the company will go for it because it's benefiting more than just one division in the company. And that's also a good way to get some young people into the industry to get out there. So again, ultimately, if you can get a survey tech trained and you get your own drone out there, that's fantastic. If not, use a little bit of a finesse and get your company to buy off on it in another way by benefiting the whole company. But I really like drones. They are the future. And if you don't do them, someone else will be, and you will be at the mercy of other companies out there doing it, where you're just getting the same information they're selling to other roofing contractors at the same time. So I want to talk a little bit, we brought this in there, new economy. So what do I mean by that? I'm sure you've heard different seminars about, you managing data is the future. Well, it is, especially in service. So what happened is, we basically, our economy moved from that traditional manufacturing based to a technology data driven economy. We've been that's why we talk about getting manufacturing back, but manufacturing still data driven, even if it comes back today. Late 90s it started, and really look at it as managing data is the new oil of our digital economy. You need to be a part of that because your big clients, that's what they want. The future is gathering data, managing data, and analyzing data. This is really what your clients want, that predictiveness, that proactiveness of understanding how much they've spent so they can make proper decisions on when to spend their money. All these things by managing their data will be more important to most clients you work for than actually fixing that leak. They expect you to fix the leak because you're a roofing contractor that they've hired. But this is where you start to separate yourself from the two men in a truck scenario. So, and this right here, this data management is the top reason third-party facilitators are so successful. Not just because they can put an avenue and a network of roofers together to take care of clients all over the country, but because that information coming in from all these different roofers, they're managing that data and be able to give analytical reports back to their clients to help them save money and properly spend and make decisions. You can do that on your own scale with your own company. You don't need a whole lot of software to do it. Most of the software that you're going to use to properly run your service division is going to be able to give you the information you need to do this. So just keep that in mind and think about that, why that's important. Staff management. So again, you are a company, you are a division, you still have to manage your staff. All these other things are strategy. There are ways to go to business, there are ways to improve it, but the rubber meets the road, there's still employees. So develop a solid hiring process. If you have an HR team, you want to talk to them about a hiring process that is different than what they may be hiring in other parts of the company by some of the things we talked about. Whether you're a repair person or a proactively maintenance person or your admin, your customer service, whatever it is, get a solid hiring process in place, which should include proper onboarding, not just coming in and someone shadowing them for an hour or an orientation with an HR person telling them what to do. Have an onboarding process, how to get them through your procedures, and then have a mentoring program. You should have somebody that shadows employees throughout their entire term with you. And it's not that hard to do. You just need to set it up ahead of time. Your technicians in the field. You want to rank your technicians and track their performance. Very, very important that you know this. You want to know callbacks. You want to know what systems they're good at fixing, what ones they may not be. What is their best competencies? What kind of performance are you getting out of them? What kind of customer service compliments, complaints, however, there's a bunch of key performance indicators that you can pick to work best for your company and rank your people. Then nothing better than knowing ahead of time who to put out where, why, and when, because you have the data to tell you that. And you want to set goals for your entire department, all your staff, and do proper performance appraisals. So I'm not just talking about yearly reviews when it comes time to give a raise. Those are probably the most inefficient means of giving a performance appraisal we have, even though that is what we're all trained to do. Performance appraisal can be done on a monthly, quarterly basis. They don't have to be formal. They can be kind of a sit-down review. It doesn't have to be done in length. It can be done even in a group with your different departments and kind of understand what's going on, and then you can appraise each one individually. You might only do it 6 months, or maybe you only want to do it once a year, but do more than just go through the HR form and check it. You want to be able to, when you set your goals, to talk to your individual employees, whether you met them, why did they meet them, why did they exceed them, or why did they not meet them. You need to do these things in order to improve, and also, unfortunately, know who should be on your team and not on your team. especially in your field staff, you want to conduct weekly meetings with your operational side, especially. You want to have weekly meetings with your estimating and sales and account management team, but those will be separate meetings. I recommend weekly because you're going to get the most information possible out of them, and you're really going to pick up on trends. It's important. Meetings don't need to be 1, 2, 3, 4 hours. But if you could bring your field team in, a lot of people just do crew leader or foreman technician meetings, but it's really good to bring them all together at least. If you brought your foreman in every week and you bring your whole team together twice a month or once a month, more than just your safety meeting, it's going to really pay off that everyone knows your vision, your mission, your goals, and what you want to accomplish. Motivate your team. You got to learn how to motivate your team, right? You can't motivate a team by telling them what you want them to hear, even though that's not what the goal of the company is or what the results are, or promising things in motivation that you know you can't keep. You want to motivate them on real life issues, real life company goals, whatever that may be. So you're going to have to figure that out by your company, but only motivate in the real. Don't ever motivate in the unreal. It'll backfire. You want to understand everybody has a value system, right? Everyone. Use their value system to communicate with your team. So an example of a value system, money. People are motivated by money. That could be somebody's value system. So they're only going to understand you when you talk in terms of what's in it for them, right? What if I do this, what do I get? Then there's other people, money has no factor in driving them other than the fact they know they need to get a paycheck and they'd like to get a bonus at the end of the year if things go well and you say it's okay. But they may be motivated and they perform better with a pat on the back, talking to them about what their issues are, what they're accomplishing. And there's other ones. So that's just a couple quick examples, but learn their value system. Everyone has one, and then communicate with your team appropriately. Discipline when necessary. So this is the hardest thing. You still need to discipline. So you can always praise in public. You always discipline in private. So it has to happen, and you have to have a value. You have to have a system in place. I always use what I call the 3 rule. First one is I sit down with an employee and I review what's not going right that I know isn't and get their feedback. I point it out to them. We come up with a plan of what they need to do to improve. Set a timeline. We're going to reevaluate this in a week, depending on the severity. Maybe it's a month, maybe it's 4 months, depending on the actual issue, right? That's your second meeting now. You're going to review what happened at first. Did we hit our goals? Did we not? Whatever the problem may be. And if you did, that's great. It all starts all over. You pat them on the back. You give them a new set of goals. You find out why they did well and you move on. If they didn't listen to anything that you told them, then really your third meeting is a termination meeting or something of that fact. So I know it sounds harsh, especially in today's world with hiring and keeping people on, but an underperformer and a disciplinary issue within your team will do more harm to the remaining team that's dedicated to your goals and missions than if you cut them out. Way more. So financial understanding and growth. So this is the last couple we're going to close on, and then we'll go to to Q&A. So this is from looking at it from the management side. So this isn't just if you're the manager of your service team. You have to understand profit and loss if you're even in the superintendent's role. And to some point, you want to explain profit and loss down into your trucks. You want to come up with an incentive program for your technicians to incentivize upselling, incentivize those hot tickets, whatever it may be. So you want to be able to have an understanding as the manager of exactly what a profit and loss statement is, how to read it, how to be able to take that and translate it down into your staff. Not everyone needs to know everything because it's not about privacy as much as it is they just don't need to understand that. So if you're now pricing, right, that's where you profit and loss. But if you're pricing and you understand that, you need to have goals for your department. You should know what your break-even point is in your service division. What is it going to do? How much does it cost me to operate? Labor, your overhead, and all that. This is the amount of money I need to generate. This is how my pricing goes out. This is my markup of overhead plus my gross profit margin to break even. That means you're not making any net margin at that point. That's how you put a sales strategy together once you know that. Your estimating team, your pricing team needs to know these things in order to make sure all pricing goes out. It's not just about taking a cost and saying, well, if I bid it at 65% gross profit, we should be okay. You want to understand what that 65 is going to net you out at the end. Calculating overhead and cost per hour. So, you've got your base wage, right? You've got your burden that gets put on top of that, your taxes and all the things that go in the burden, insurances and all those things, right? And then you've got an hourly rate. So you may pay somebody $25 an hour. Maybe the burden rate is, say, 35 or 40. Let's just say 40, keep math simple. And your overhead in your company, in your service division, could be different from the overall. So your accounting team can help you figure this out. You may have higher overhead because of your operations, which is normal. Say your overhead is 30%. So now you need to know how to take that. So now you're going to take your $40, which is your bare burden cost, multiply it by 1.40 or 1.30 because you've got 30% overhead, and that is your bare cost of your labor with overhead. So again, now you know what goes out. And what I recommend doing is taking a blended rate when you're estimating of your whole department and go out with a blended rate. But still, you need to know where that is. Then you set your profit on top of that. So setting and pricing your service rates. So if you don't know what your wage rate and your burden rate and your overhead rate to come to a solid pricing, right? What's your hourly rate? It's very hard to set your pricing on your service rates. So again, a lot of people like to say, okay, well, the average price I'm hearing out there is $100 an hour, and I should do all right at that. You might do extremely well. You might not if you've got a lot more overhead costs or a lot more burden costs than other companies through insurances or 401ks or whatever that may be. So you need to know that. So you know that, hey, my overall burden rate with my overhead is $65 an hour. Now I'm selling at 100. So now I know what I'm making in gross profit every hour that goes out in T&M. And when you're pricing your jobs. And again, material pricing and other service charges. So material pricing comes into effect. And this works a great strategy of understanding this, especially if you're working with third party. You want to make sure that you're getting recovery on all the materials you supplied and other charges. I know when I worked in that end, I would want to charge for any rags we used, primer, gasoline to run a generator, whatever that may be, because that's what we use. Because a lot of times we get lazy in pricing for our individual clients and just come up and add a little extra markup onto our materials or our labor to cover those charges. But when you're working for a lot of bigger companies, they won't allow you to do that. They want a detailed invoice of exactly what you used and what your pricing is. So learn how to do that. Understand your financials. And, from that, flat rate pricing. So I recommend in service flat rate pricing whenever possible. And what I mean by that is if you don't have to break down material and labor and, and you can get a price out there and say, instead of coming out on T&M, it's going to not to exceed 2,500 or something like that. And you go out and you put that in and they're not going to make you break it out by every item. That's great. But flat rate pricing really comes in when you're going out and putting a price together and say that same leak would have been T&M. You've got to break that out. Now you can go out and say, I can fix your problem for $1,500, and that's what you're selling. So now you don't have to say, I'm going to be there 4 hours at this rate and use all this material. You just say, this problem's going away for $1,500. It's easier to sell. It's easier a lot of times for the client to understand. And more importantly, you're probably going to make a lot more profit doing it that way. So that's why I like flat rate pricing whenever possible. Maintenance agreement pricing. So maintenance agreement pricing gets very tricky throughout the industry. And it's done in many different ways. It can be done in a flat rate pricing. I've seen it done price per square foot, depending on the size of the building. I've seen it done on price per inspection, including certain items. So there's probably 4 or 5 different ways that you can price up maintenance agreements. Whatever it is, stay consistent within your company and do it the same way each and every time, so you don't have multiple customers getting different types of pricing and they happen to get together and say, I don't understand this. So again, it's also easier on your staff to do that. So there's many different ways. There is no rule of thumb on pricing maintenance agreements. I've heard people say it should be this, it should be that, $750 a visit, $1,500. it's got to be what works for you and what you can sell within your company. But one thing you want to look at aside from maintenance, I'm going off just a little bit here, is get a preferred leak agreement, right? Get an agreement signed by the client that they're only going to call you and you're going to be there because you're going to respond within X amount of time. It doesn't bind them to paying you X amount of dollars every year for a maintenance agreement, but they're going to call you if they signed a non-obligation agreement, which actually is an obligation for you to perform, and you're going to get paid your rates that you need to get spelled out. So there's different ways of building your way up to that maintenance agreement. Determining sales price. Again, know this. How do you determine your sales price when you're doing work and service, whether it's a repair or whether it's a maintenance items, or whether it's putting down coating or liquid applied roofing system, doesn't really matter. GC project, whatever it may be. Once you know your break-even costs, you know your burden costs of labor, you know all that, and most importantly now, you know your profit strategy. What did you set as your goal to make as a net profit for your division for that year? And then you back your way into that. So if you decided you don't want to make less than 20% of net with all your mix of work, I'm just using it as an example, then make sure your pricing mix goes out accordingly, that you're going to end up with that overall percentage of work coming out with that maximum, that whole goal of 20%. So again, have your strategy, and that's how you price. Inventory and company tools. Some companies have big warehouses. They sign them out that way. I will tell you one thing that really works is truck inventory. Even in companies I've worked in that have large warehouses with it, keeping a separate inventory for service can get messy. A lot of times it's just as easy to sign it out of an overall inventory and assign it to the truck as they need it. So come up with what a truck's going to, you'll know this if you're keeping track of your people with your KPIs. What do you want to keep in that truck? What is it, what do you need to keep there? If they're only going to do TPO work or they're going to do a mix, what do you need? It's going to be, $2,500 worth of material on the average a week. That's assigned to the truck. And every time it fills up, you're going to know the difference. And that's a good way of keeping your truck bucket costs together. And then you weren't, charge your labor to that truck, everything. So you'll know the exact profitability of your trucks, right? Of your tech crews. Very important on incentive programs. Plus, it's very important to know what's more important, to have a truck is doing $500,000 a year in revenue and they're netting out 10%, or having a truck doing $400,000 a year, but they're netting out 30%. And then we'll all agree you want the higher net, but you won't know this. You're just going to think the $500,000 truck is way out producing the $400,000 crew. Not necessarily the case. So know your numbers and know how to charge it out. Works real well. Same way with tools. Everybody should have their own tools, access to generator, whatever they need. It gets very convoluted if you're sharing stuff back and forth. It disappears. No one's ever touched it. Don't know what happened to it, but you're constantly buying equipment. So another thing you want to track is your actual cost of callbacks, right? And then how do you account for them? So when you're working on the financial end of your business, you should know by tracking your technicians what their callbacks are, right? And you should have a policy in place. If you got to go back and fix the same leak more than twice, is somebody being notified of that and higher up in your company? So that's a policy thing. But this you want to track as well, because if you're incentivizing your crews, which I highly recommend putting a great incentive program in to get everybody to be part of this, but you also have to track what your callbacks are so that you're not paying money out on something that truly wasn't earned. Plus, you also want to know by callbacks. That will help you find out what they're best at fixing and what they're not. Not all callbacks are technicians' faults, but you want to have a track about it to make sure you're getting paid for, because a client will always call you and say it's the same leak 90% of the time. Just because they're getting water in a building doesn't mean it's the same leak. So you want to track these. And then how do you account for them? You've heard about buckets. So you may find out that you got a service division of $10 million and you've got 20,000 worth of callbacks. So you can accrue for that in your yearly financial planning, and then you've already got it there. And if you've done less than 20,000, you're actually making more profit. If you do a little bit more or even double at that case, at least you've accounted for some of it. Again, this is a little more detailed, but always think about that. So you want to get everybody in a mindset to have the least amount of callbacks as possible. And if you're tracking for them, you'll know. And also, two, you want to track your callbacks if you're a service division that's taking care of your operational side of your company. I also do recommend that. Production crews are the worst ones to ever go back once a job is closed out and to try to fix a leak when a whole truckload of crew stops on the way back. But you don't want to eat that as a service division. So how is your company allowing you? You should be able to charge your operational side a predetermined dollar amount, just like you would if you're working for a third party, and be able to, maybe you're not making high profit, but you got to make something. You got to make sure you covered your overhead and all that. Should be a separate entity and be looked upon a profit center in your company. Don't do free work. All right, so I'm going to jump into questions. I did see a couple come through, but while I do that, I'm going to put up the next screen, which is my contact information. Basically, I want to let anyone know that's on this, on this session today. Feel free to reach out at me at any time with any question via email. My direct email is jkenney, JKENNEY at cotneyconsulting.com. Reach out to me. I'm happy to answer your questions. You can call on that number, reach through, or go to my website and hit me with a thing. I'm always happy to answer anything you have. So a couple, let's see, this one just came through. What is a type incentive that you would give service crews to hit monthly? What I like to do is, first of all, you need to know what you're going to set for your profit for your crew. So if you know your numbers, which you can figure that out fairly easily, and you put a crew out there, as I would make callbacks part of it. So if they get callbacks, it comes off of that. But you want to give them a percentage of whatever profit they're generating. So let's say a crew, does that $400,000 a month, and they're generating, let's just say, $100,000 in profit, right? Whatever that may be. A year, whatever it is, whatever you set. So the monthly is 100,000. Whatever you're going to be able to produce, whatever their profit is that you expect out of that, that's what you have to pay them to do it. Now set your gates where they get a percentage of the profit above and beyond that, especially if you're doing the coating and the roofing work or maintenance work. Even on leak repairs is a little hard to incentivize on. That's why I say put it in a pot. So it works really well to sit down. What I've always done is I've taken my service crews, and most companies do bonus out. And let's just say the average bonus, the company, and again, I'm only making these numbers up, so this isn't numbers to work off of. I'm going to pay out $1,500 to my service crews at the end of the year. That's what we normally do. Why we did it, we have no idea, but we did it. So I would just tell them right away, you're starting out with $1,500 in the kitty, and that's just to perform as you normally do every year. If you get to this gate and generate X amount of more bucket profit, do it off the truck profit bucket. It's easy for them to understand. It's easy for you to track. Then you're going to get X percentage of that. So if you are more efficient and produce higher end upselling work through these hot tickets, right? And we can do something a little different than that. I'll give you that in a minute. But you're going to get, if you generate an extra $50,000 worth of profit that we didn't expect, I don't know, number, I'm going to give you 10%. You're going to get a $5,000 bonus on top of your $1,500 that you would have normally got. But at the same token, if you underperform, that's coming out of the kitty the same way, and explain that. So there's an upside that you want them to hit, and there's also a downside if they don't. And I always like to let everyone know in my service divisions what the incentive bonuses are, who earned what, and have a leaderboard, because everyone's on the same program. So as long as they're all on the same program, it doesn't matter that you share that information. Competition is a great thing for profitability. So hopefully that answered your question. It's a little more complicated than that, but that's kind of like the way I like to do it. That's the easiest way. Hot sheets, upselling, I like to pay those right away. If I go out and I got a service crew goes out and they find an additional $1,000 worth of work, you come up with what works for you, a percentage of that. Maybe you're going to pay for every 1,000, you're going to pay out, I don't know, $50, whatever that may be. Just do that. Do that separately from on top of this, because you want them always to be incentivized to bring in higher profit work into your company. Roof survey techs are another great one incentivized to go out there and bring in work. You can almost treat them like a sales team. I will tell you right now, when I'm talking about roof survey tech, that's your person going out, meeting with your client, doing a roof report, coming back, presenting the roof report and selling it. So they have a little bit of technician in them, maybe a little bit of estimator, and they're trained in how to sell. I will tell you, one roof survey tech going out and stocking reports, and that's all they do for a living, should be able to generate anywhere from $400,000 to $600,000 a year in positive income into your company. And usually the break even's around $1.50 for you. So that tells you how much more money you can make. I've seen people sell over $1 million off of roof reports. So again, you got to put the system in place. So the other question that I had come in real quick before we break is what is the difference between a preventive maintenance contract and how would you price that? Well, we kind of talked about that a little bit. So I think that came in earlier. But again, I want to stress on that primary, there's benefits to having that roof leak service agreement prior to get them into that pro maintenance, proactive agreement for the preventive maintenance. So work on that. And let's see, I think I had one more question about percentage on re-roofs. Yeah, I did. So I had a question that came in about what does it, I'm sorry, we answered that about the budget. It's about 3% of budget. This question was, how much can I expect to sell on re-roofs? So that's hard to say, but I can tell you statistically throughout the industry, this is coming from the facility manager, BOMA, those type, where they've done their surveys, that 63% of owners will award a re-roof contract to the people who are maintaining their facilities. So again, that's pretty good odds. That's almost 2/3 in your favor of bringing a re-roof into your company because you're doing the proper end on your service and maintenance side. So that's pretty good odds. So it's hard for me to tell you how much work should flow through that pipeline because it's going to depend on how many technicians you have out there. But seriously, a $10-15 million service division, once you get past probably year 2 or 3, if you start at one up, because it takes a while to fill that pipeline, once you start to get to that magic 3, 5, and 7 year out, you're probably going to generate $1.5 million a year off of that in re-roofs minimum, maybe $2 million as a constant flow. But the most important thing is to look at it, more importantly, that 65% of building owners will award to a contractor they have an existing relationship with. And if they think if they have learned known you to be their industry expert, their knowledge expert, that's probably going to increase your odds even more. So that being said, if I have any more questions, pop them in now. If not, I want to thank everybody for attending today, and I'll send out a link for replay you can share for everyone. I do hope that you got a lot out of this. And again, any questions other than that, you can email me. I'm happy to answer them and point you in the right directions. So thank you, everybody, for attending today, and I'll see you soon.